Okay, so welcome everyone. And I'm really excited to kick off this webinar series that the title is Would This Solve My Needs? And the topic today is going to be about personalization. What to expect from this series is that every month or so, we're gonna have one of these webinars where we're going to concentrate on a topic, and the idea is we'll go through list of products that we usually review or evaluate for that topic. So for example, obviously personalization is a big one, but there could be other topics such as, for example, setting up marketing automation. Would these products solve my automation needs? Others could be segmentation. So we're coming up with a list of topics, and this has come together based on clients having these questions and asking to say, hey, I have this product. Does this really allow me to do this? I'm trying to accomplish this. Does this allow me to do so? And because of all these questions, I was like, hey, let's do a webinar. We'll record it. This way, if a topic comes up to around, for example, in the future around personalization, you guys can watch this webinar and get all the goodies about it. So today we're going to concentrate on personalization. And personalization, it means different for everyone. So we're going to spend some time going through what we think personalization is. Or how we leverage personalization in the work that we do. And then we'll go through a list of the products that are in the space that enables you to do personalization, as well as optimization and testing. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we're going to give our perspective on it. And for today, obviously, I'm your host. I'm Jerry Helou. I lead the data activation. Well, I used to lead the data activation team. Today, I lead the solution architecture group, which is the combination of digital strategy as well as architecture and data architecture. So this team helps clients like you in figuring out how to leverage their technology stack or expand and grow it. And then I invited two of my favorite people who used to be my clients back in the day, but now they are my pillars for the personalization practice at Softcrylic, Andy and Chris. I'll let Andy introduce himself, and then Chris, and then we'll get things started. Andy?
Hey everyone, I'm Andy Johns. I am a principal consultant here with Softcrylic. I've been around these tools for greater part of a decade, and even before that in the analytics space. So yeah, I deal mainly with personalization and A/B testing here at Softcrylic, and just helping get our clients the most value out of the tools at their disposal. So,
thank you, Andy.
Hey guys, I'm Chris. I work with Andy, and primarily Andy. I work with Jerry as well, not as much as I'd like these days, but I've been working with the testing and optimization tools for quite some time as well, dating back to when Adobe Target was called Test and Target. So been working in a few different industries, retail, financial services, and just trying to leverage customer strategies and how that can be parlayed into their testing and optimization tools.
Sweet. All right, so yeah, I think with Andy and Chris, they combine the behind the scene. I think Andy is very good at uncovering the true power of these tools, and then Chris will help us looking at, from a strategic side, what are the things that clients should be thinking through or anticipating in these products. So a combination of these two guys is going to be critical for this conversation, and I think we'll open up a lot of great discussions. So I'm really excited for this. All right, so as we start, I think would be good to just level things up and just say, okay, what does personalization mean to each one of us? And Chris, I want to start with you. Given that you work closely with clients and helping them in thinking about how to leverage personalization, generating use cases where personalization is an important piece of it. What does personalization mean to you?
Yeah, so obviously personalization is a fun buzzword to throw around, and it means something different for everyone. But I guess to answer your question, I think it's understanding at a high level, understanding the differences between your customers and recognizing how they're unique so you can treat them uniquely. So, you know, that's I guess that's kind of vague, but understanding their uniqueness and what uniqueness their information they're providing you and how you can leverage that into growing a stronger connection with your customers. So between the brand and the customer, treating them with, you know, a unique experience specific to what their preferences are or any other piece of information that you have.
Okay. Andy, what about you? How do you look at personalization?
Man, I agree with you, Chris. I don't like all the buzzwords. If you strip all of that away, it's basically just relevancy, creating a relevant experience, and that's it. And there's really nothing more to it than that. And that can be a relevant offer. It can be relevant navigation. It could be, you know, contextual components on a page or in an app that's, you know, relevant to you. Ultimately, personalization just boils down at the base level just to relevancy, and that's it. So yeah, that's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, I think you guys sum it really well. I think talking about the buzzword, yeah, there's this consistent thing that sometimes we say it, but we hear it a lot from salespeople, that personalization is the right message to the right customer at the right time. And I think that's an overkill, right? Like, you would never know what is the right message for the right person at the right time. I mean, I might be having a bad day. How would you know I'm having a bad day, right? So you're not going to know it's the right time. But I think the relevancy is key, right? So if I am a person who is a common shopper and I leverage a specific part of your site, let's say the example of, let's say, coupons, right? That I leverage coupons, and there is certain products that I buy from you. A personalized experience for me means, like, show me the coupons that are likely that I will need, right? If you know that I buy, what do I buy lately? I've been buying a lot of these muffins for my son. He loves them, and they're expensive. But if there's coupons and that are related to it, and there's, you know, I can save $1 or $2, hey, I would like to see it. Show those the top for me and show me other stuff. Or if you see that I like when I come to the page and I want to watch videos and not look at because I don't like to read, then show me videos on top. So personalization, I agree, it's relevancy. It's really making the experience better. It's not always about selling, in my opinion. Like, yes, we should use personalization to sell some of our products and increase the return on investment. But if our personalization actually is about creating a better experience for our customers or members or whoever we are marketing to, then that's going to be what sticks. And that can be as simple as navigation, can be as simple as number of steps to reach somewhere, or seeing the things that might be interested in versus not seeing the things that we know we're never interested in. So that's my perception as well. All right, so why do we think personalization is important in marketing? Chris, I'm going to go back to you. We've done this many times with clients where we've seen that they have the tools, but they're not using them. And then we spend a lot of effort and time in making a case of saying why this is important for them, what are some of the things that you've done with other clients that you can share here about the value or importance of personalization that in marketing that we're able to recommend to our clients, and then seeing them using it and actually getting value out of it?
Yeah, so I think at a high level, just understanding the differences in your customers, whether that, depending on what the nature of your business is, if there's different tiers of membership, or if they're shopping for, you know, vastly different items, you know, those experiences should be a lot different. And you know, to answer the question that's on the slide, why is it important? I think, you know, it's been proven to drive, you know, to drive ROI. It's proven to move the needle by creating those unique and tailored experiences. So I'd say it's important because it's expected these days. You know, whereas in the past, maybe it's, you know, it's been a competitive advantage. And now I would say by personalizing, you're basically just, you know, it's table stakes. It's basically just getting you in the game, and it's expected from a customer standpoint. So to take that step further, I guess, personalizing even more, or being more sophisticated in how you personalize, is what's the new advantage. And whether that's, you know, tailoring based on your behaviors on site or triggers that are happening in real time, versus, you know, in the past where it might just be, you know, we know you've shopped for this in the past, so we're going to send you an email a few days later. Now it's more real time and it's more instantaneous.
You know, that's you said something that really resonated with me, and I'm curious on how this is going to change with the next generation of shoppers and consumers. We expect more, right? We expect the brands to know us and understand what we like. Like, if sometimes, and I know I'm a little bit judgmental here, but sometimes if I go to a website and I see this message that completely is not related to me, and this is a brand that I expect them to know because I buy and I engage with them, I get so offended. Like, how don't you know me? Like, what, all this information I'm giving you, why are you showing me this? You know I'm never going to buy this. You know I'm not interested in this. So we're like needy. We expect, even my son, who's 4 years old, sometimes get pissed when he's like, why am I seeing this ad? Or if he's seeing something on the website, like, get me to the video I want to watch. So our consumers now are very critical of the experience they want. And yeah, they're opinionated. And I think that's part of it is important, is curating a personalized experience, because they have many options, they have many things they want to do, and also their attention span is so short, and it's getting shorter and shorter. They want to get to the point. So the faster that we can get them there, the better experience as a whole. Andy, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, it is the baseline expectation nowadays. I mean, a couple of quick examples, like just this morning, I was on my iPhone and I swiped down to like order, you know, to order a coffee. And I was like offended that Starbucks was not in the list of like recommended apps. Like, that was my expectation, that it should be there like this morning because I want a coffee. And
where were you ordering the coffee from? Like Google Maps?
No, just the like recent apps, you know, suggested apps or whatever,
yeah,
on your phone.
Okay.
So little things like that add up to a personalized experience. And it's now my expectation that my phone knows I should order a coffee in the morning, and it should be right there, one tap away. And I'm honestly like frustrated when it's not. Like, the bar is set so high now,
Yeah.
that it's basically required. And same thing when I'm doing like a Google search. Like, if the auto suggest, you know, doesn't come up with the thing I am actually looking for within the first like 2 or 3 results, I get frustrated. You know, the same thing with Amazon. Like, if I accidentally visit Amazon in like an incognito window and it doesn't show me anything relevant on the homepage, I'm like, what is this garbage? So the bar is just so much higher now, and it literally is the expectation. And it's not just offers, you know, like homepage hero banner or marketing tiles. It's the entire experience, where you know, the examples I gave are not necessarily marketing. They're just little pieces of the user experience that are tailored to me. So over time, you can see that personalization started more with, kind of marketing and offers and whatnot, but now it's kind of bled into the entire experience. So it's just becoming more and more necessary in order to stay relevant.
That's a very interesting point. So what you're alluding to is that, yes, we're talking about marketing, but it's not only marketing. It's about it's your everyday, I don't know, what's happening, right? Day to day, we want to have catered, personalized experiences because that's the world we're in.
Yeah, it's the experience as a whole. So
yeah,
it's not just marketing. So
okay, I like that idea, and I think this is where, if I were a marketer, I want to think about personalization in that context. That it's not only about a campaign, it's not only about launching of a product, it's about your everyday, what we call evergreen experiences. How can we make sure that those are catered to be personalized so that we're enhancing the experience, not only when we are trying to market a product or sell something, but it's about just every day. And that's hard, but I think that's key.
Yeah,
okay.
It's hard, but that is marketing. I mean, the experience as a whole is marketing, not just one placement on a particular channel. You have to think of the entire user experience and consider all of that as marketing and how it kind of ties together. I mean, the last thing you want is kind of one message here, then a totally different message here, and it's disjointed. So you kind of need to think about marketing a little bit broader nowadays anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, if anyone is listening that has, I feel like this is something where it would be nice for executives to hear in organizations where it's different parts of the organization that control the different experiences. So you might have, and I just want to spend 2 minutes on this because that's a big topic. We don't have to dwell into it now, but the idea is you have email, you have the website, you have the mobile app, you have the Google and programmatic, you have the advertising arm, all of these, and also you have customer care and customer experience. All of these are part of the touch points that as marketer, you need to be aware of, because this is where your consumers might interact with you. So personalization should be happening across all of them and in a consistent way as much as possible. But given that in an organization, you're not going to be overseeing everything, but make sure that there is some kind of connectivity between these so that there's consistency in the way that you're carrying your personalization across the different interaction channels. Good point, Andy. All right. So before we dive into more of personalization, and as we were prepping for this webinar, Andy brought up a really good point about how we got to personalization. So I wanted to spend some time in, and we call it history lesson, and I'm a big fan of history. So Andy, do you mind just sharing with us like your perspective? Because you came into the space about a decade ago, started with A/B testing, and you've seen the growth and changing into optimization and personalization. But give us your perspective of how did you see that growth happen?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, if you think about like a maturity scale, and you've probably seen these all over the place, in terms of sophistication, in your kind of journey toward personalization, it always kind of starts with, basic A/B testing, and then you get more and more advanced to do like rules-based personalization, and then eventually like machine learning. But it wasn't always that way. It used to just be A/B testing, which was kind of like the real life equivalent to doing like an in-house usability study, where you're actually kind of looking at what people are reacting to and trying to change the user experience to make it better for everyone, which is great. I mean, you still need to do that, but that kind of goes back to why I like to look at this in terms of relevancy, because relevancy expands the entire gamut. So a lot of times you'll hear, even today, you'll hear A/B testing and personalization, like it's two separate silos, but it's really not. It's one continuous spectrum. And I think relevancy is that bridge, because a more relevant experience to the majority is accomplished through A/B testing, seeing what works best and, kind of changing the default experience to, make it better for the majority. But then you tailor that more and more to specific, audiences to ultimately you get your way toward personalization. And, that's just a natural evolution. And I think it's really just the technology is kind of caught up with what we expect. It's not that like personalization was never a goal a decade ago. It just wasn't as feasible as it is now. Machine learning was in its infancy. The tools just weren't as sophisticated as they are today. So it's just a natural evolution. But, we still have these two silos, like they're two separate things of A/B testing and personalization. But really, you need to be thinking about them both as one continuous spectrum, especially if you're evaluating like a new tool or something. Is it just an A/B testing tool? Or does it go beyond that, and does it actually help you with the further end of the spectrum, more toward more sophisticated personalization?
So do you think that, and we've talked about this before with some clients who were struggling in standing up a personalization practice, but would A/B testing be, let's say, step 0 in getting them to mess around and figure out like what works in terms of what could lead to personalization ideas, or that's not the right approach? What do you think?
No, it is the right approach. A/B testing is the foundation. You almost have to start there in order to get some quick wins and kind of prove the value of, hey, if we change the user experience, we can see that this wins over this. But does that win for everyone? Maybe not. That's when you start, treading into personalization. But I think a good foundation is always in A/B testing. Especially if the program is brand new or your organization hasn't really done any sort of testing or personalization before. Starting with basic A/B testing is always the right approach, especially to kind of get buy-in, kind of get the ball rolling, and just kind of gradually work your way up to some of those more sophisticated tactics. You kind of have to learn lessons along the way. You can't just immediately start and go 120 miles an hour. You're going to make mistakes there that could be costly, because you learn a lot of the fundamentals of how to look at things statistically, how to make sure that the results you're seeing are actually, significant. And if you skip that kind of learning by doing, then you might make some bad business decisions further down the line if you just jump straight into the most sophisticated stuff. So I always like starting with a good foundation and working your way up.
Yeah, like back in the day, there used to be this market research or like a small group that you would show them things and they will decide, oh, we like red, or we like square buttons, we like a drop-down menu, and you go ahead and you implement them. Now, you are expanding your market research or your user group to everyone, and you're testing, right? And seeing, okay, do we really like square? Does everyone like square? The people who like square buttons, are they in a specific region or a specific age? So you have like a lot more information to work with. And then from there, you can say, okay, maybe from this A/B test, I've learned that for people who are coming to the site at nighttime, they like this type of layout or these type of colors, versus people who are in the daytime, they might appreciate this type of layout. And now you are creating personalized experiences for 2 sets of audiences or more based on tests that you've run, right? That could be a possible scenario. Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. And even kind of expanding this spectrum of A/B testing to personalization, you can even kind of expand that further into usability studies, where you're actually looking and watching what people are doing one-on-one. Do they find this confusing or not? but that's only like one data point. So a lot of times your hypothesis might come from what you observed in a usability study, and then you broaden that with a larger scale A/B test, and then refine that even further into subsegments with personalization. So all of this is connected, but the unfortunate thing is a lot of organizations are set up to where these are discrete groups, but they really need to be working together in order to really get, the most value out of some of these tools at their disposal.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I really feel like the theme of everything that I'm hearing too is the data capture and what data is available and what, how sophisticated your data is. Because when you're collecting data from all of these different touch points and you're able to marry them together, that's when real personalization happens. And when I was in college, there wasn't a such thing as a digital marketing class. I took a market research class, which was studying survey responses and how do you market based on survey responses to different groups. But it's really the same thing, essentially. It's just advancing the sophistication, the technologies of capturing that data from all these different data points and different touch points that interact with your brand, and how do you connect all of those. So I think to Andy's point, it's evolved in terms of how we're capturing that data. And then I think the kind of pinnacle of what you're striving for is being able to connect all of those into a single, single source. So you marry all of those experiences across those data points. But, it started with, is bounce rate improving, or are people clicking this more often, to now we're looking at different segments and targeting them based on different interests and what they've done. And that now it's all of these different digital touch points, how you connect all of those into a single experience.
Yeah, this is very good points. And one of the things we probably, I would recommend for the viewers, if they're really interested on learning more about how to grow their practice. Chris, you wrote a couple good blogs, but one of them recently about building up your personalization practice, right? Which gives some ideas on where to start and how to leverage some of these in growing a practice. Am I right?
Yeah, it had a piece about the tools necessary, and then people and process were kind of the bulk of it, getting the right people in place, and then what the process was to stand it up.
Excellent, cool. Yeah, I feel, and this is based on the stuff that we've done with clients, so it's not fluff. It's reality on how we've seen other clients adopt and create this practice. So if you're interested in taking your personalization into the next level, I would recommend reading that blog post. Okay, let's get into the meat of it. So we have a list of products. Some products I'll say that we are very experienced in. Some products we've worked with a little bit. So we'll tell you on how much we know about them, but we'll give our perspective. One of the main products we work with, Andy and Chris work with day in and day out, is Adobe Target. The way I want to evaluate this is through some of these points. So as you see here, there is around 10 points that usually comes up as evaluation, not evaluation of how the product performs, but can this product do this? So I'm going to go through them, and then we have a set of these products, so hopefully we'll be able to cover all of them. But let's start with Adobe Target. And I think we know that Adobe Target does site personalization. I think if you don't know that, please know that. But the question that always comes up, personalization in email. And that's a tricky one because it is possible, but it's limited. Andy, we've done this for a few clients. We had our hits and misses with it. What's your perspective about using Target as a personalization tool for personalized things in email?
Sure. So at the core, Target is a cross-channel, cross-platform sort of personalization tool, meaning that includes email. However, there isn't like an out-of-the-box sort of like, oh, this is the email component. You just plug it in here and it works. There's a lot of work to it. So the way client-side sort of email personalization works is really through image redirects. And Target can do that at a very basic level, but it can't do it in a way that is very sophisticated like Movable Ink can do, because that's kind of what Movable Ink was based on, the email personalization of swapping images in and out dynamically. So at the core, Target can do it, but it's not suited for sort of render time personalization in email. What you can use it for is really more for recommendations. So that's a pretty good use case there, where you can kind of tap into the user's profile, see what sort of products to recommend to the user, and use the API responses from Target there to kind of build in those recommendations at build time into the emails. So it basically, Target was not set up. I mean, its bread and butter is not personalization in email, but there are some use cases where it can be beneficial, particularly for like product or content recommendations at build time.
And that's critical what you said, at build time, not at open time, right?
Yes.
These are two different things. Build time is when the email is being built and sent. Mm-hmm. Open time is when the email is opened at the client, at the recipient. And these two can be within seconds, or they can be weeks or months, right? So I want to make sure that it's clear.
Yeah, absolutely. So the build time thing is very important, because that's where the most of the kind of the meat or the power of it is, because Target's kind of render time or open time sort of capabilities are just limited, because it's really just image redirects at a very sort of basic level. So
yeah, and then also I would say one thing to keep in mind, and this actually also impacts Movable Ink a little bit. We'll talk about Movable Ink at the end, but with the crackdown on email and what calls are allowed to go out of email. So, for example, in iOS, some of the latest versions, you are not able to track opens, because when someone opens the email, none of these calls are allowed to go to the email ESP, as well as definitely any third party such as Adobe Target. So in some cases, you might be limited in getting these calls to the API and getting the images back. So that's something to keep in mind. What about site personalization? We know Target does it. How is there anything special about Target that it does with different site architectures, whether it's your traditional site or single page applications?
Yeah, so a client-side implementation of Target is really just doing DOM manipulation. It's taking, HTML elements of the page, rearranging them, basically making changes after the fact. So, I mean, it's pretty much the same as what like a client-side implementation of Optimizely or Google Optimize do. At the core, they all do the exact same thing. Target tries to make it a little bit easier for single-page applications, but in general, single-page apps are tricky to deal with in the first place, and chances are you might need a developer to help assist there. So, at the core, all these tools, Target included, all do very well with basic site personalization. I think where you get into nuances are like your particular application. Is it an Angular app? Is it a React app? How is the pages actually built? How do you want to make the changes to the page? So for example, a lot of these tools are looked at as marketing tools, but they have very deep sort of IT impacts as well. So you might not want to be making those types of changes on top of your single page app, because it might break the integrity of some core functions. So as sites get more sophisticated, I think it's a little bit more complex than just saying, can you make a change in the WYSIWYG editor? So technically, yes, you probably can, but should you? I don't know. I mean, that's where you really need to work with your technology teams to understand what makes the most sense for your particular site. But I'd say for basic sites, all of these tools will, work very well for A/B testing and to some degree site personalization.
So one thing you brought up here, and I think this is critical for people to evaluate, is this user friendliness and also the developer need to make Target successful. Target does have a user-friendly UI, the WYSIWYG editor and such. But in some cases, depending on the complexity of your site, even if you're doing a client-side implementation, many cases, I mean, we've seen to get the power out of Adobe Target, you will need some developer input to make some of these experiences. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're like a mid-market company and you don't have very complex needs, you have like essentially a WordPress site, then yeah, I mean, some of the out-of-the-box basic capabilities of swapping things out, making basic HTML modifications, that's easy stuff for both Target as well as many of the, its competitors. But when you get into more complex things where you want to start, making API calls to other systems to plug in dynamic content and integrations with your content management system, that's when things, get a lot more complex than what you might see in a product demo. And those are the questions that you need to be thinking of and need to be asking when you're evaluating these tools is, the demo might look great, but how does that actually fit in practice with what you actually want to do? So it depends. And it depends heavily on your organization and how your sites are structured.
So if I were someone new to the A/B testing and personalization, can I leverage Target as a, like, can I start with Target, or would Target be too advanced?
No, you can absolutely start with Target. It does all the basic things just as well as, any of the other tools. I mean, some of the pieces of the UI might be a little bit more, kind of convoluted compared to some of the competitors, mainly because Target is kind of architected in a way that is meant to be cross-channel, cross-platform. So some things that, you'd think would be super intuitive if it were just for web, maybe are a little bit more complex in Target because it tries to account for mobile app and kiosks and server-side call center sort of use cases all from one single platform. So yeah, I mean, you can definitely start with Target, especially for easy use cases, but just know that there are other tools that are probably more user-friendly for smaller companies with more basic needs. So I will say Target's definitely a enterprise grade sort of heavy hitting tool that requires a pretty good chunk of technical expertise to really get the most out of it. Yes, you can really get the most. Yeah.
In addition to Andy's points on the integrations, analytics is a big part of that too. So I mean, it's an obvious decision if you're using Adobe Analytics. I think it obviously works great with that native integration, but depending on where you want to report on your test and performance, could be a decision-making factor as well. The reporting directly out of the UI is a little more limited, but if it's something where you are already using Adobe Analytics, and it's more of a no-brainer. But yeah, I think how you report and what types of reports you're looking to generate from your test could be a deciding factor as well.
What about the idea of a platform versus an engine? Where do you see Target? Is it a platform, or is it it's a personalization engine?
That one's a little tricky because it's hard to look at Target just as one piece to the puzzle. So if you just have Target and nothing else, then to you, it's the platform because you have to do everything in Target. However, if you have other components of the Adobe stack, like Adobe Experience Manager for actually authoring the content to integrate with Target, then Target kind of becomes more of the engine because you're offloading some of the stuff that you would normally do in Target to other pieces of the overall platform. So it kind of depends on what's in your overall stack. So Target's a little weird in that it's kind of both depending on the big picture of what you have in your technology stack. So if by itself it's a platform, if you have a bunch of other Adobe stuff in your stack like Adobe Analytics and AEM, then I'd say it's more of an engine kind of doing the decisioning around who should see what. So yeah, a little bit of both.
Okay. And then does Target support, I mean, I know it does, but in terms of the machine learning capabilities, how do you see like value in some of those that Target offers?
Yeah, I'm sure Chris can chime in, but I'll give my 2 cents on it. So yes, it does have machine learning, and Adobe likes to sell that as kind of the one of the reasons for their premium offering, to get access to some of the AI and machine learning support for like auto targeting, like a curated set of experiences to the best audience. I will say it is kind of a black box. There are some reports that kind of give you insights into why it made the decisions it did, but ultimately you don't get a bunch of detailed insight into exactly why the decisions were made to show one person this and another person that. So yeah, they're there and they're useful. Sadly, I will say that a lot of our clients that license some of these features don't end up using them as much as they should. So it takes a little bit of creativity and sometimes a leap of faith to let a machine learning model kind of do its thing and use the lift as the proof that, hey, it's working. Yeah, it does take a leap of faith.
Yeah, and that's some of the obstacles that I know I've experienced in the past too, is the leap of faith in, maybe your executive level doesn't know exactly why certain things are showing, because we can't, it's not black and white when you're using this out of the box machine learning, or you're using algorithms through Target. So having that trust in the system, and that, we're driving lift at a higher rate, or we're getting to confidence faster, I think is really the selling point there, because it is a little black box, a black box type of methodology where, if it's recommendations or if it's automated personalization, using those out of the box algorithms they're not always easy to communicate, the how and the why to leadership.
Okay, yeah, and I think this is where it's key for people to understand, is that there is cases where the machine learning is bring your own algorithm in, or build your own algorithm, versus others that are, hey, there is an existing algorithm that you can use. And I think Target is more about, here is an existing algorithm that you can leverage, but it is a black box, right? So, and that's a differentiator in many cases between different personalization engines. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because we have a lot of companies that have very sophisticated data science teams, and sometimes they want to kind of activate on their own models, not necessarily use someone else's. And unfortunately, Target's not a great fit for that, because you're kind of locked into the models it has. The exception is the exception is recommendations. You can import the results of your models into recommendations, but that's really more like a giant lookup table of saying like, hey, if the user is viewing X, then show Y. So yeah, I will say that there isn't really a good bring your own model sort of support with Target.
Okay, 2 more points on this, and I'm seeing that we're spending a lot of time, so we might not be able to go through all the products, but we can always have an extended part 2 for this if we need to. But the 2 things that I want to touch here is server side. Is Target, does it support server side as well as the client side?
Yeah, it does, and it does it pretty well. I think the differentiator with Target is that its server-side offering is kind of bundled in with the overall product. It isn't a separate thing. It's client-side, server-side, cross-channel. It's all one platform. And I guess kind of what Target does really well is keeping a profile of kind of user behavior across channels, as long as you have some sort of unique ID that you can use across channels. So for example, a customer ID. So you can link together web interactions and then personalize and say the call center. That's all possible with Target based on its the way that it's kind of architected and built.
Got it. And then in terms of costs, we don't, obviously we're not licensing these products, but the server calls and the amount of calls that Target might fire might play into the cost, and I think this is a critical piece, right? Indeed, we've seen many clients who went through implementation of Target and not done properly, where because it's doing an integration with analytics or integration with audience manager, there were so many calls firing that they were going over their quota. So I would say that's something that needs to be careful from cost as well as performance.
Yeah, and I'll just give one little tip on this one. So Adobe prides itself on the integrations between their tools. However, not all the tools are licensed the same way. So even if you have like unlimited usage of Target, if that's integrated with something like Audience Manager or Adobe Analytics, you might not have unlimited there. So just be mindful of the integrations and any kind of overages that you may incur with the other solutions outside of Target.
That's a good point. Okay. All right. So we got 10 more minutes. So let's see how many more of these products we can go through. Optimizely. Maybe in a summary, Andy, what's your take about Optimizely and some of the differences you might see compared to Target from a usage and a product?
Sure. So I will say that Optimizely is probably Target's closest and biggest competitor. Just to kind of highlight a few differences. Optimizely tends to focus a little bit more on mid-market. So their web usability is technically, or quite frankly, a lot better than Target in terms of just getting up and running and seeing value. Their pricing is probably a little bit more favorable toward mid-market as opposed to giant enterprise stacks. I think some of the key differences between Target and Optimizely. Unless something changed very recently, Optimizely kind of has two different flavors. They have kind of the client side sort of package, then they have kind of a server side option as well. That's a little different. Those are almost like they're two separate products that are used by two separate teams for the most part. Whereas Target is one contiguous platform that is used across all channels. So just the way that Optimizely is architected is a bit different. It does tend to focus a lot more on the A/B testing side of things. And for that, it does A/B testing really, really well. It's a fantastic tool for A/B testing. So if you're just kind of getting started, Optimizely is a great choice, especially if it's just limited to web, or you're trying to do some like product rollout sort of feature flag things with server side. It's a great choice. It does have some upfront sort of developer requirements to kind of build out components to use, which is really not that much different from Target as well. But once you're up and running with Optimizely, it's easier for a marketer to go in and make changes. Whereas with Target, it feels like you need developer assistance kind of ongoing most of the time. So those are probably the main difference. The biggest one is probably the client side versus server side thing, how it's two separate silos essentially. And the fact that Optimizely wasn't really built for cross-channel tracking, whereas Target was. So if you're trying to personalize across multiple channels, Target's probably going to be a better fit, especially if you're already in Adobe stack and have those tools.
Yeah, and one quick call out that you mentioned, Andy, about feature flags too. I know Optimizely has a pretty awesome UI feature flag tool, toggling things on and off. If it's something that's a little bit bigger that you don't want to render on page to build a feature into the background and toggle it on and off. That's something a marketer can definitely do without as much development support.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, one thing that we've seen with Optimizely is that they evolved beyond just this product, right? So Optimizely as a company, they are known now also from DXP, like additional experience platform. So they have from a content creation, so they really expanded on their CMS. So the idea that their CMS and their testing and personalization are connected together. And also they are hooking into other tools, such as allowing them to do some other things, such as data platforms and marketing automation. So they're expanding beyond this tool. So that's one thing to consider also. If you are, based on what stack you have, if you're an Adobe shop, it might be an easier lift for you to expand to a product Adobe Target. But if you're getting new into the space, you might start with Optimize and expand more in theirs. That's always something to consider for your growth with these tools. Okay. Salesforce Interaction Studio. I think this one has a different name now, but everyone knows it as Interaction Studio. Andy, Chris, thoughts on this? We've worked a little bit with it. We have few clients that leverage it mostly in email, but what else can you say in terms of differentiating it from the Target and Optimize the offerings?
Just one note, from my limited experience, I know that there's a lot of trigger capability and like behavioral triggers. It feels like there's more of a journey manager side of it than maybe Target. So I think that would possibly be something that's a benefit to using it if you're trying to manage triggers and seeing things at different touch points. But yeah, Andy, I don't know if you have some background.
Yeah, you're right. They renamed it like personalization something or other, but yeah, it's definitely more focused across the journey as opposed to anything else. But from a user-friendly standpoint, it's very difficult to use and kind of understand. There's so many levers and dials that you can mess with that it's almost
like any Salesforce product though, right? Like there's,
well, yeah, exactly. So if you're a Salesforce shop and you have in-house Salesforce knowledge around, kind of how to work with these tools and you know their nuances, then yeah, it might be a good fit. But just on the surface, if you're looking at just this, it's a little overwhelming. And support, I think, would be a little tricky. Salesforce expertise is sometimes a little rare to find, especially around niche products that maybe not as many companies use. And this is one of them, where finding the right kind of expertise around how to really get the most value out of it would be a little tricky. So if you're going to go down the Salesforce route, I'd say having in-house expertise or partnering with someone who definitely knows the ins and outs of it is a must to get the most value out of it.
Yeah, and I would add on the piece of integration, because Interaction Studio comes up a lot with discussions about Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Salesforce CDP, Salesforce Journey Builder. So if you are in a place where you have Salesforce Marketing Cloud for email and SMS, and for example, you are considering the CDP, this Interaction Studio is going to come in as as a no-brainer, right? Because this is going to be your way of doing testing and personalization, and it integrates, of course, much better than other tools within that ecosystem. So keep that in mind, that is the engine or the platform that does the personalization, and that's kind of embedded, has one foot on within Marketing Cloud, another foot within the CDP. So that's where the Interaction Studio fits in. All right, 2 more minutes. Let's see if we can go through a couple more. I can never say the name of this. Is it VWO, or does it have a cool way of saying it? Chris, how do you say it?
I don't think there's a cooler way of saying it. I think it's an acronym, but I don't think there's a better way to say it.
Okay, so VWO. And this, actually, I had my first interaction with them when in a B2B marketing automation conference, and they came up as being used heavily in B2B space. Chris, what do you think? What is different about VWO, and what is it e-commerce specific? Is it B2B? What's your take?
Yeah, I think it can be both. It's got a really intuitive platform. I don't want to say it's bare bones, but it's definitely very test focused. You can do A/B test, multivariate. So there's a lot of the same functionality. But I think what kind of sets it apart that's really cool is you can do a lot of different visualizations in reports. Like there's heat mapping, where you kind of zone the different areas of your site. You can look at the heat mapping from different tests, segment your visitors that are in different experiences, and and see that, as well as they have funnel reports, session recordings. So some of the more reporting and visualization features, I guess, are a little bit different. A lot of the basic testing functionality is the same, but yeah, some of the different visualizations are really cool.
Andy, anything you want to add on VWO?
No, not really. This is one I don't have a ton of hands-on experience with, but yeah, my understanding is pretty much matches up with Chris's on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it integrates with Google Analytics. The reporting within the tool might be a little more limited, but it integrates with Google Analytics. So a lot of stuff either, you integrate with Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics to really look at your performance.
I do think this brings up a good point though. So you mentioned like session replay and like heat mapping, all that stuff, which is a cool feature, but a lot of our clients have those sort of session replay tools as well. Like they might have ClickTail or Hotjar or some other sort of session replay tool. You can typically integrate those with something like Target or Optimizely to be able to slice people who are in the test. Here's the heat map for their experience. But a lot of times, companies might not even know there's an integration. So understanding not just the tool, but also what can connect into that tool can help you get more value out of it. So,
yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to skip Google Optimize and just maybe talk about Movable Ink. Movable Ink has, from my experience with it, has been mostly a personalization engine or platform for emails, where we've used it in many cases where we wanted to swap offers or images or content in an email as the email is sitting in your email box. I know they are heavily getting into AI and doing more. They recently had a summit up in New York and they had a few announcements. But it sounds like the impact of iOS 15 had a little bit of impact on their capabilities, but they are finding ways to work through them. Chris, Andy, anything else you've seen work on Movable Ink that relates or competes with some of the other products we talked through from a personalization?
I'll say Movable Ink is kind of unique. I mean, its bread and butter is definitely the email channel. And frankly, I don't think there's anyone that does it better than them, at least in terms of email. Their solution is really unique and effective for what it does.
Do they also have the website thing where I remember like the idea of you going above a certain part of the website, they're able to personalize to you. So they're beyond just the email, correct?
Yeah. I mean, the platform can be used for a multitude of use cases. I mean, at the core, it's an image redirect server is what it is. So it's essentially you're requesting one image and then, based on the data that's sent along with that, it'll return a different image. So it's a little bit different in that it's not necessarily returning, kind of HTML and JavaScript that's injected into the page, but at the core, its image redirect server is really creative and can be used for some pretty cool use cases, starting with email, obviously, but you could extend that, beyond.
Okay. All right. I think we're at time, a little over time. This was fun, guys. I want to do this again. Thank you for coming and sharing your knowledge. I think everyone will appreciate it. But yeah. You guys have a good rest of the day, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
Thank you.